We live in times of great uncertainty and times which are quite fearful. And I think in the last year, but longer than that, but certainly the last few months, the focus or the prism from which we've seen a lot of that uncertainty, that focus of fear and uncertainty has been through around the question of refugees. So about a year ago, I was down at St Paul's Cathedral in the crypt, and it was a launch of Capital Mass, and there was a stall which had London Hosting. And in conversation, it suddenly occurred to me that one of the ways in which we as clergy, and I include myself in the Church of England, are blessed is the amazing accommodation we have. So most of us have accommodation provided for us by the church for the job. And in some cases, we have spare rooms. Being a parish priest for 16 years in the last job, lots of people came to me and said, what can I do? What can I do at an individual level? The problem is so enormous. And it sort of, those two things came together. What could I do? Well, one of the things I could do is simply open my home, open my spare bedroom to the needs of someone who is a refugee seeking asylum in this country and going through the system and needing some support. It's deeply central to our whole Christian identity. That is what our ministry and our mission and our faith is all about, is opening our hearts and our lives to God, but also we can't do that alone. We have to then open it to our brothers and sisters around us. And so the germ of the idea was sort of created in that conversation. And then I needed to decide how we could do this across the diocese. It's a fantastic diocese with amazing clergy, and it's quite a large area. So the first conversation was with my fellow archdeacons, and to an archdeacon we all agreed this was something we could roll out right across the capital. But clearly there are always concerns and anxieties around opening our front door. We're never quite sure who's on the other side of that front door. So of course it necessitated a conversation with the diocese. And from the get-go, the diocese were open to this, not least because, of course, we are in the middle of our Capital Vision 2020 with our three big C's: confidence, compassion and creativity. And so, of course, this touched on that whole area of how we show the compassion of Jesus Christ to those with whom we live and around whom we work. And so I spoke to the property department, and we looked at the documents, the agreement that London Hosting use, and I got a green light. This is not a contract. We'll get into the detail of it. It doesn't give a residence, a tenancy to a person, a stranger, a visitor, a guest. And so the green light came from property. They had no problems with it. I then had to go to the legal part of the diocese, get the legal view. And again, they went through the paperwork, and the agreement was, this doesn't constitute a tenancy, this is okay, it's a brilliant idea. And then, of course, I had to think about how we then approach the rest of the diocese, the clergy. And I suppose at that moment, some people say, well, why just the clergy? And I guess the reason for why just the clergy is not just the clergy. We've got to start somewhere. And because we have the gift of these parsonages, which are often slightly bigger than we actually need. I had 10 years where I had spare room because my daughters left home. They've now both come back, so I haven't got spare room right now. One's come back with a baby too. But because we had that 10 years, there was a kind of sense, well, rattling around in a 4-bedroom house, just my wife and I. So why the clergy? Because we lead communities, we're part of communities. So if what we do is looked at and observed, others might follow. And it's a bit like throwing a pebble into water, it ripples out. So even if it's just one or two clergy, those two clergy, or that one clergy person exists in a deanery, 20 other churches, other clergy. If one is doing, maybe others will look and be encouraged to follow example. And of course, the really exciting is none of the clergy live in isolation. They live in a worshiping community of hundreds. And again, if the vicar is doing this, then hopefully the congregation. Some of the congregation will say, well, if my vicar's doing this, I've got a spare room, I could do this. And what is it this that we're doing? We're opening our homes, we're creating a space in which someone who needs somewhere to sleep can come and be a guest for one night, for a weekend, 6 months, for a year, however long the process is for their to see the end of their application for asylum. And that's the beauty of the scheme. It's down to the individual to determine how long they wish to open their doors and their spare bed to be used in that way. I guess the obvious appeal for us as clergy is we start with Scripture, and therefore let's listen to those words afresh. Jesus commanding us, when did you welcome the stranger? When did you see the stranger? When did you welcome the stranger? Matthew's Gospel. We see the stranger around us all the time. We walk past the stranger in the street. Sometimes we put money into their hand directly, other times we support those agencies that support them. It seems to me here is an opportunity where we could give something a little bit more, because we have been given so much in the first place. It really is about gifting. We've been gifted with these homes, which in some circumstances are bigger than we actually need. And here's a wonderful way of taking that gift and sharing it. So the heart of our story, our Christmas celebration, is the notion of homelessness. We know that famous line, which will be repeated hopefully through many schools, hundreds of schools, by many hundreds of children in their nativity plays this year, is "There is no room in the inn." Well, there is room in my home. Can I use it to host an asylum seeker or a refugee?